They said nature herself crafted her flawless, too pure for this world. But beauty draws hunger, and when a Roman judge decided she must belong to him, the law itself became a weapon. This is the story of a father who chose blood over dishonor. So our host decides the mood needs a bit of lifting, or perhaps just a change of scenery. He looks over at the doctor of physics, a man of serious learning and impressive robes, and says, "Let that last sad story drift away on the wind. But now, doctor, I pray you, tell us a tale of some honest substance, something with a bit of moral fiber." The doctor gives a grave, scholarly nod and says, "It shall be done if that is your wish." And right then and there, without needing to clear his throat twice, he began. Listen close, everyone. This story takes us all the way back to the grand days of Rome, at least according to the history books of Titus Livius. There was a knight named Virginius, a man whose reputation was as solid as the marble columns of the city. He was stuffed full of honor, had friends in high places, and a purse heavy with gold. Now, despite all this wealth, the knight had been blessed with just one child by his wife. A daughter. No other children came along to clutter up the house. And honestly, you have to picture this girl. She was beautiful, not just pleasant to look at, but fairer than any living soul you could hope to meet. It was as if nature herself, rolling up her sleeves in her great workshop, had taken special care with this one. You can almost imagine nature standing back, wiping paint from her hands and saying, "Look at this masterpiece. I formed and painted this creature myself. Who dares to copy me?" Pygmalion, not a chance. He can hammer and forge and carve until his arms fall off. I dare say even the legendary painters, fellows like Apelles or Zeuxis, would toss their brushes away in frustration if they tried to capture this likeness. The Creator made me his vicar general to shape earthly creatures however I please, and for this girl, I decided to make her perfect. So nature was feeling quite proud of herself, and rightfully so. The maiden was 14 years old, and she was a vision. Just as nature can paint a lily white and a rose red without spilling a drop, she had painted this noble creature with those exact, vibrant hues. Her limbs were flawless, and Phoebus, the sun himself, seemed to have spun her hair out of the very streams of his golden heat. But if her beauty was excellent, her virtue was 1,000 times better. She lacked nothing that deserved a good word. She was chaste in her body and equally so in her spirit. She was humble, patient, and moderate in how she dressed, and how she acted, no flashy silks or loud giggling for her. She was discreet when she answered questions, wise as the goddess Pallas, yet she spoke simply, like the modest woman she was. Every word out of her mouth rang with quiet virtue. She was constant in her heart and kept herself busy, knowing that idleness is the devil's playground. The god of wine, Bacchus, had absolutely no power over her. She knew well enough that wine and laziness are just fuel for the fire of bad behavior. She would even pretend to be sick just to avoid those wild parties or dances where things might get a little too loose. Those sorts of gatherings just make children grow up too fast and too bold, which is a dangerous business indeed. Now pause for a moment. The doctor had a little aside here, a pointed message for all the governesses and parents in the crowd. He said, "You ladies who look after lords' daughters, don't be annoyed with me for saying this. But remember, you were hired for one of two reasons. Either because you kept your own honor spotless, or because you made your mistakes long ago and learned the hard way. So for the love of heaven, teach them virtue. Don't be slack on the job. An old poacher who leaves the trade makes the very best gamekeeper, after all. So keep them well, and you parents listen close. While your kids are under your roof, the burden is yours. If they perish because you were looking the other way, you will pay the price. Under a soft, sleeping shepherd, the wolf has a fine time eating the sheep. Anyway, back to the story. This girl didn't really need a governess. She guided herself better than any stern matron could. Other maidens could read her good deeds like a textbook. Her fame spread through the streets like wildfire. Everyone praised her, everyone, that is, except envy. Envy is always that sour guest at the party who hates to see anyone else doing well. One sunny day, this maiden went into town toward the temple with her mother, as young girls do. Now there was a justice in that town, a governor named Appius. And as fate would have it, this judge cast his eyes on her. He watched her walk by, innocent as a dove, and suddenly his heart and his mood darkened. He was caught in the trap of her beauty. He muttered to himself, his eyes narrowing, "This girl will be mine, no matter the cost." The devil, finding the door unlocked, jumped right into his heart. He whispered that Appius would need a trick to get her. The judge knew he couldn't use force or bribes. Her friends were too strong, and she was far too virtuous. He would never get her to sin with her body willingly. So after chewing on the problem, he sent for a particularly slimy clerk in the town, a fellow named Claudius. The judge told Claudius his plan in hushed, secret tones. He made the clerk promise not to breathe a word to a living soul, on pain of losing his head. Claudius, valuing his neck, agreed. They mapped out the whole conspiracy, point by point, plotting how to satisfy the judge's lechery under the guise of law. Claudius went home to prepare his lies, and the false judge, Appius, went about his business, puffing out his chest and looking important. Soon after, the judge sat in his court, handing down rulings on various cases with a face of stone. Suddenly, this false clerk, Claudius, rushed in like a man on a mission. He cried out, "Lord, if it be your will, do me justice on this petition. I have a complaint against the knight Virginius, and if he says it isn't true, I will prove it with witnesses." The judge, acting as if he'd never seen the man before, said, "I can't give a definitive sentence without the knight here. Call him in." Virginius arrived to hear the judge's will, unsuspecting as a lamb. The petition was read aloud, and it went something like this: "To you, my lord Appius, your poor servant Claudius declares that the knight Virginius is holding my servant against the law. She is my slave by right. She was stolen from my house one night when she was very young. I will prove it. She is not his daughter, whatever he claims. So my lord, give me back my slave." Virginius looked at the clerk, eyes wide. He was ready to defend himself, ready to prove, as a knight of Rome, that his adversary was lying through his teeth. He had plenty of witnesses to the girl's birth, but this cursed judge wouldn't wait. He wouldn't hear a single word from Virginius. Appius slammed down his judgment immediately. He declared, "I decide that this clerk should have his servant. You won't keep her in your house a moment longer. Go bring her forth and put her in our custody. The clerk gets his slave. That is my final award." Virginius stood there, stunned into silence. By the sentence of this corrupt justice, he had to hand over his dear daughter to the judge to live in absolute shame. He walked home, his feet heavy as lead. He sat in his hall and called for his daughter. His face was dead pale, like cold ashes from a dying fire. He looked at her humble, sweet face with a father's pity piercing his heart. But his mind was set. "Daughter," he said, his voice cracking. "Virginia, there are two ways before us, either death or shame. Alas that I was ever born. You never deserved to die by a sword or a knife. Oh, dear daughter, ender of my life, my last joy and my deepest woe. Oh, gem of chastity, take your death with patience." This is my sentence. For love and not for hate you must die. My own hand must cut off your head. Alas that Appius ever laid eyes on you." He told her the whole sordid story. "Oh mercy, dear father," cried the maid. She threw her arms around his neck, just like she used to do when she was small. Tears burst from her eyes like rain. She looked up and asked, "Good father, shall I die? Is there no grace? Is there no remedy?" "No, certainly, dear daughter mine," he whispered. "Then give me a moment, father," she said, her voice trembling. "Let me mourn my death for a little space." For even Jephthah gave his daughter grace to weep before he slew her. And God knows, she had done nothing wrong except running to see her father first. With that, she fell down in a dead swoon. When she finally woke, she rose and looked at her father with a terrible resolve. "Blessed be God that I shall die a maid," she said softly. "Give me my death before I have shame. Do your will with your child in God's name." She prayed to him then that he would smite her softly with his sword. And then, overcome with grief, she fainted again. Her father, with a sorrowful and cruel heart, lifted his blade and cut off her head. He took it by the hair, grim and bloody, and walked straight to the judge to present it, right as he sat in court. When the judge saw the gruesome proof, he turned purple with rage and ordered his men to grab the knight and hang him fast. But right then, 1,000 people rushed the court. They came to save the knight out of pity and righteous anger. They knew about the false iniquity. The people suspected something was rotten because of how flimsy the clerk's challenge had been. They knew it was all done with the assent of Appius, for they knew well enough that he was lecherous. So the crowd turned on Appius like a tide. They threw him in prison immediately. And there, unable to face his ruin, he slew himself. As for Claudius, the slimy servant, he was sentenced to hang on a tree. But Virginius, showing a mercy his enemies lacked, prayed for him. So instead of the noose, he was only exiled. Everyone else who had consented to this cursedness was hanged by the neck. Here, friends, men may see how sin gets its merit. Beware, no man knows how God will smite. You never know when the worm of conscience will wake up and terrify you for a wicked life. It doesn't matter if your sin is a secret. No one knows but God and you. Whether you are ignorant or learned, you don't know how soon you will be afraid. So I advise you to take this counsel to heart. Forsake sin before sin forsakes you. Alas, my masters, a heavy tale indeed. Our host was well nigh overcome with pity for the fair maiden Virginia, swearing by nails and blood that such false justice is a curse upon the land. "By Corpus Dominus," he cried, "I have need of a draught of ale or a merry jest, else my heart shall break. So, before we turn the page to lighter matters, grant us the boon of your favor. Strike the like button as a judgment against tyranny, and subscribe to our company, that you might not miss the remedy for this sorrow in the tales to come."